Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I am happy that one more time I got the opportunity to be with dear friends and members of Ahlul Bayt Islamic Society of New England and ZEC MIT Shia Muslim Association. As Dr. Masalai said, this is the lecture series called Qur'an in Yemen. Generally, we are looking to the verses of Quran somewhat related to Saudi Arabia, which includes Yemen and Ethiopia. We looked to the Surah Al-Buruj, the last two lectures, on the focus on the Ashab al-Ukhdud. And now kind of we want to elucidate the historicity or what historical event related to Ashab al-Ukhdud. So we look to something which is called History Martyrs of Najran. Is a more general review of the history of the Yemen and Ethiopia, the few centuries before Islam. And then we may have to go back to it too again for some aspects. So that's the general outline, what we are going to do. But we have an occasion, which the end of today's 28th of Zulqa'dah, 29th or 30th of Zulqa'dah is the martyrdom or the of demise of Rehla Imam Jawad alayhi salam, our ninth Imam Muhammad Jawad alayhi salam, and then he's buried in Qazimin. His grandfather Imam Musa Kazim, the seventh Imam. So to have a remembrance of him, I have listed three wise sentences from him, the wisdoms from him. The first one says, the references are below the slide, down the slide. The best worship in sincerity, also the best manner of worship in sincerity, doing it for the sake of God, not maybe people or attention or something else, or habit. A bounty that is not thanked is like a sin that is not forgiven. So that is important. This causes us to remember to what ni'amat we have. And then the last one, I think he was a very good exemplar of it. There are three qualities which allow the servant to attain God's grace: of repentance, humbleness in front of others, and humbleness in this life, humbleness with dealing with other brothers and sisters, and abundant offering of charity. Especially this last name, his name Jawad is kind of manifestation of this last quality. Today, when I was looking the stuff, I saw a post by I. Muhammad Ali Abtahi, which I thought is interesting. So I started sharing with you. As you know, he was in the cabinet of President Khatami. With him, they met Pope John Paul II, the 2-3 popes before. And then I read it I thought this is interesting. It says, after he says the grandfather and grandson rest side by side in the city of Qazimin, Imam Musa ibn Ja'far, the seventh Imam, and Imam Jawad. Tonight is the night of Imam Jawad's martyrdom. Jawad means generous. Whatever we ask of him, he grants. So that's the meaning of it, kind of. He said in a very bitter night in 2009, I made a vow for a mourning ceremony for Imam Jawad and received my answer. So that's his suggestion. This is the part which I'm emphasizing. If you need something this word, some problem, some need, I think some nazr or something for Imam Jawad would work. It says in religious teaching, it is said to turn to Imam Jawad for worldly needs. I too, and then on the nights of his passing, eagerly seek the smiling gaze of that Imam, ask for my wishes. So if you have wishes, worldly wishes, look to him. Tonight is the night. Every year I hold a morning ceremony. For a few years they were public, but recently used to have in private. You too pray and make your request. It is at least suiting for your heart. لطفا این صلواتی ختم کنیم. صل علی محمد آل محمد. So we go to our main topic. As I said, the main topic is Quran and Yemen, and maybe has a subtitle which is a little bit longer, looking at the Quranic verses related to pre-Islamic Saudi Arabia. As we said in this lecture series, we'll explore chapters and verses of the Quran that in various ways connected to Southern Arabia, which is broadly defined. This region includes present-day Yemen and Oman, specifically the ancient kingdoms of Himyar, Saba, and Hadramawt, as well as Ethiopia, historically known as Habesha or Usi. some other names. We worked with the Suratul Buruj, and I think we after this naturally we go to Suratul Fil and Quraysh, which all are interesting topics, and some of them even regarding the controversial issues and connected. And then maybe some of the verses. I'm thinking it's possible we have to do something about Al Isra, verse 110, and maybe one other verse of the people of Toba. But I'm not sure we can do all of these. Our aim is to gain a deeper understanding of the meaning and significance of these surahs and verses by examining the religious, political, social, and cultural context, as well as the historical events of pre-Islamic Southern Arabia. So this, as I said, very fits in our lecture series before. You can call it, uh, prehistoric Arabia or Quran and history part. We have read the verses. I'm not going to go to the commentary, but look, the focus will be this story of Ashab al-Ukhdud. So the verses 4, 5, 6, and 7, 8, 9, essentially. But we discuss about the structure of the surah, the summary of lecture one. Also, Dr. Masali kindly put it on the website and also the channel. We put this lecture to inshallah soon too. But for now we want to go to the history. But one more time, want to have in mind what feature Quranic verses have. So it says, قُتِلَ أَصْحَابُ الْأُخْدُودِ is a curse. And the swearing and the oath at the beginning is not to tell that Ashab al-Ukhdud had been killed. No, that's separate. We discussed it. This tell us is a la'na, like margbar, or قُتِلَ أَصْحَابُ الْأُخْدُودِ, perish the people of ditch. And then what is this ditch? In this ditch is the fire with is a fire which is abandoning fuel. So in this ditch, there is a huge fire which is lots of fuel added to it. And then these people of ditch above which they sat, al-nar zat al-waqud, we saw, is home, and then in referring, is home alayha qu'ud. They sat upon it. We discussed even all the verses, how qu'ud is used, and we emphasize qu'ud is not never used in relation to Jahannam or punishment in hereafter. And as they were themselves witnesses to what they did to the faithful. هم على ما يفعلون بالمؤمنين شهود. So these people of Deech or companion of Deech is a group, you're grouping people different ways, sometimes Ashabul Kahf or other forms. So this is one way, the companion of cave, companion of ditch. And then remember, companion cave also were Christians. But this is somehow related to Christian martyrs. And then ما نقموا منهم إلا أن يؤمنوا بالله العزيز الحميد. They were vindicative towards them only because they had faith in God, the Almighty and the All-Laudable, and to whom belongs the kingdom of the heavens and the earth, and Allah is witness to all things. So this tells us the why they killed them, because they believed in God. And then again, we said this is our earlier verses, surahs of Quran explaining always who God is Allah Azizul Hamid, الذي له ملك السماوات والأرض الله على كل شيء شهيد. So the ownership of all the heaven and earths is to him, and he's always witness to all things. This is a topic which is getting hot recent the years, and even the last few days, even today. Ahmad Jallad had some interviews, some papers regarding what was Allah understood to be Allah in pre-Islamic times, because as clearly Quran says, Mushrikeen, they were Allah, and then they associate creativity of the world to Allah, but they associate other gods besides Allah. There was a pantheon. God, maybe Allah was a supreme God, but it wasn't the only God. Maybe they used to go to other gods. And then we know from Quran communication, they accept Allah created the world, but some of inscriptions they find, but in Northern Arabia, not related to Southern Arabia, associate to God besides creativity, giving light. Or maybe that's interesting. That maybe some of the stuff, actually not this lecture, later on when we go to the religion and monotheism in Saudi Arabia, maybe related to some of the puzzles or questions which I, Jalad, have raised or are there. We'll see in inscriptions. But that I have to see. Maybe 2 lectures from now we get to it, or 1 lecture from now. Anyway, so we're not going to go to the rest of the surah. And then we said the whole issue Ashab al-Ukhdud, what type of group they were. Uh, Many of Muslim commentators, and we saw Walid Saleh was arguing this is historical even in Arabia, which Arabs are familiar, is a historical event. And then we sent to the hadiths, they were a little bit, again, like as usual, some other events were listed, but majority were talking something related to persecution of Christians by the Jews in Yemen. Uh, then there were some Western scholars, but although some Muslim scholars have noticed that too, that the other option could be Daniel tree, which were threatened by the Politis king of Babylon to be thrown to fire. They were thrown in the fire, but they were saved. And that's very different than the theme of this story. The theme of this story is that they were burned. They were punished. The believers were burned. And the wicked thing happened. There, the king notices the angel comes save them and took them out and give them prominent positions again. So it's very different. So although some scholars even recently want to revive this Daniel theory, even many Western scholars are not following that. But a recent article, 2019, was to revive it. But then most of them have moved it to the hereafter, which that's the crux of the argument of Walid Saleh was against it. Much of his argument, no, this is not about hereafter. You read the verse, read the structure, read the meaning, read the terminologies. It is about an event, some people, which they were then promised they will be punished in the hereafter. We said the 2 main verses of this surah are this verses 10 and 11. إن الذين فتنوا المؤمنين والمؤمنات ثم لم يتوبوا فلهم عذاب جهنم ولهم عذاب الحريق. So indeed, those who persecute the faithful men, here fatanu is persecution is used, man and woman, and do not repent thereafter, there is the punishment of hell for them and the punishment of burning. And the other side. So this is a warning to those who persecute believers, do not obey by the justice and fairness, the rules of God. And the other one is أن الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات لهم جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار ذلك الفوز الكبير. Indeed, those who have faith and do righteous deeds, for them will be gardens with streaming running them. That is a supreme success. And then remember, the target is the contemporary people, both the mu'mineen, the new Muslims and new believers, and also the mushrikeen, which are persecuting them. So that historical event was put an example to emphasize these general principles. Uh, uh, so it's not hereafter, but we went to the hadiths, so we want to see what historical event is. So we want to see something about Arabia. I want to go. It's an interesting, fascinating story, and especially you go read it about what happened in Yemen and Ethiopia in the few centuries before Islam, between Christianity to Islam. That period of 500, 600 is interesting, and there's some stuff still very useful for future discussions. But I briefly go through a tour, focus more closer to the events near the events which we think Ashab al-Ukhdud referring to, that martyrs of Najran, which happens in early 6th century. But in another lecture, maybe I have to come back, for example, to discussing that verse in Surah Al-Asra, or generally the religious feature in Saudi Arabia, and a little bit more detailed repeating or discussing some of the topics. And then regarding the sources, I'm using, as you know, the article by Walid Saleh, which actually this lecture I'm not going to use it much. I don't think we have time, but I will come back to it next lecture. To going back to Quran, kind of summarizing or wrapping everything, the first three lectures together. We go next lecture to this. But there is one important article which I started with. This is from the series of the articles by Professor Neubert. Sinai. It's a very good series. Actually, I think it's the first article. The Martyrs of Najran and the end of Himyar, which is important. That's the topic today on the political history of Saudi Arabia in the early 6th century. Exactly what we are focusing. Uh, and and then there is a series of articles. The guy which is very famous in this field nowadays is now retired, about Yemen inscriptions. South Yemen is Christian Julian Robin, and then he has a review article which is accessible, Arabia and Ethiopia, and we will go some of it today, but there's many other stuff earlier, which is you're interested in pure history, which, as I said, I think is partly interesting to know this history a little bit more detailed, give much more sense some of the narrations you hear, the events you hear, even the verses of Quran, even the names which we see people have now, okay. For example, now we see somebody's name is Cyrus or Darius, why they put the name in Persian culture. Then you can get, okay, where these names were coming from. But unfortunately, Christian Julian Rabin, most of his articles are French. They're accessible, but they're French. And one or two important articles which are long, they're 100 pages, some, and this one was also long, 90 pages, but in English. And one important one, which is very detailed, is unfortunately French. I mean, nowadays we can translate with the artificial AI. I was going to try it, but there was much that time. Maybe next few lectures if I see something important. But the one we discussed, this one is one of the latest. I think we have everything we need. And then he has two other articles again, and another series of articles, Arabs and Empires before Islam. And then one is earlier before Himyar. If we want to do Queen Sheba, I mean, there the story is less, but maybe if you want to discuss that, this would good. And then today, I'm using some of the maps, but it's the same topic: Himyar, Aksum, Arabia Desert, and Late Antiquity. Aksum is the other name of Ethiopia, and actually, I maybe use this name today. So I will show it to you. We have a few names for Ethiopia now: Ethiopia, Habesha, Aksum. It was called Aksum Empire, like the same maybe because Persian Empire or Medes Empire, Achaemenid Empire. So that's it. So let's go to a brief history and geography of Yemen and Ethiopia. As I said, Ethiopia could be Aksum, Abyssinia, which is the Habesha, uh, which Muslim car, but these are all sections of the region which now is Ethiopia. Look, this map, I think maybe we spent some time on it, and then we have to come back to some of the stuff. And then you have to look at it a little bit contemporary too. It is the tale of alliances, exactly like today. You know, I don't know, we have alliances, resistance alliance, access today, Iran, used to be Syria, Iraq, maybe Yemen, resistance Lebanon and Palestine. And then we have the other axis, maybe Saudi, Emirates, Persian Gulf states, Arabian states, Israel. And then also you have the great powers, China, Russia one side, US one side. So if you know that history is very similar, and interestingly, some of the geographic alliances are similar. Okay, what we are looking first is South Yemen. So you see Yemen is here, Ethiopia is here, very close, and these two have connections. Economically a lot, language-wise somewhat, culturally somewhat, and then the first Muslims, when they migrated in the time of Mecca persecution, they moved to here, moved to Habesha. Okay, so the Ethiopic Empire or Aksum Empire is here. The capital was Aksum, so this is called Aksum, like empire, like us. I mean, you call it. I mean, why the name was used. Let's go with that. Aksum is here, Mecca is here, Medina is here. We'll come to Yemen. And okay, maybe I said Ethiopia. Let's go finish Ethiopia. And there is an important ports around here called Adolis, but I don't have it in this map. And so there are other ports too, but the important one Adolis and Aksum. So I have this in mind. But coming to Yemen, Yemen it considered three kingdoms. I mean, maybe more, but three kingdoms are important for us. One is the more ancient one is Saba, related to Queen Sheba and or the people she belonged to. I mean, because he was queen of them. Okay, which is the central and northern part. The kingdom was Mareb, which is not shown in this map. All the maps have deficiency, but it's close to this dot. And then I say kingdom. The capital was Mareb, which had the famous dam, and later on it broke, and then maybe caused even some people from here moved to Medina. So Aus and Khazraj were originally Yemenese tribe, so they come from here to there. uh they was doing agriculture. There was a second city which is now the famous Sana'a, the capital. Sana'a was the second capital, the same in maybe in Achaemenid Empire. I think Shush was the main capital, but Persepolis was the secondary capital, and even the Achaemenid kings mostly were in Babylon. You know, that's another story. Babylon was like New York, which was the center of economy and so on. Okay, we have the Saba kingdom, which in ancient times were dominant. They give the name to the language and especially the script. Then we have another kingdom called Himyar, which is more toward the south. Eden is here, but Zafar was their capital. Zafar was the capital. And then we have a third one, which is not as powerful, but it is there, and it's Hadramawt, which is, again, you see this partitions in Yemen still is there. We have so Houthis or they are mostly from this northern part. And then those southern government, which is from here, and these guys always they go their own way, and then you see. So we have the three kingdoms, Himyar, Saba, and Hadramawt. And at the time we are going to look, Himyar gets the upper hand. Around 300 AD, the beginning of the 4th century Christian era, for 200 years, Himyar gets the upper hand and unified the whole South Yemen. And then the capital becomes Zafar, so the more important city. I mean, Ma'arib or Sana'a over there, or the another port here was there, but these are the Himyar is dominant. So we're talking about Himyar era. We can divide the history of this pre-Islamic Yemen before the Himyar dominance, and then the collapse of Himyar dominance, which is very close to when Islam came. So we kind of see that. And then the Najran, which is the city which we are looking to it, the center of events. And then we know a delegation of Christian of Najran, also from Abahala, came to Medina, straight line. So it's Najran here. And then there is a city, sometimes I'm not sure, because the inscriptions are crucial. This Qariyat al-Fav in Saudi has some interesting inscriptions. And then the Arab tribes, which I'm not going to go through that much, but you see this is older time. And then first the regions, this region in when you go to Arab, Saudi history, Islamic history, this coastal region, which is Jeddah is in it, this side of the mountains is called Tahama. And then the other side of the mountains called Hijaz, which are, I mean, Mecca is somehow considered Hijaz, but anyway, maybe the mountains here are this way. But anyway, but Mecca is considered Hijaz, Yastrib, and then there is the Ta'if, which is not shown here. And then we talk about some other cities up there, which we don't need to talk. This Ma'ad, and there are some tribal alliances, which this is older, and then you can see some tribes come out of this. But Ma'ad, which I will maybe talk next lecture a little bit more. but this is a big tribal area here. Then we have Nizaris and Muzar here. Maybe another slide will show it to you. But the important thing I want you to notice is the grand alliances. First, there are two proxy or subordinate Arab kingdoms, which are important. We don't know much about them because close to the Islam, they were dismantled. And that actually, they say maybe one of the reasons the buffer zone between Persian, Sassanid Empire, and Arabs goes away, Muslim Arabs goes away. And if that empire, that kingdom was there, maybe the attack to Iran wouldn't be does easily happen. Was the Ghassanid or Jaffni, the old name is Ghassanid Empire, but nowadays these scholars want to call it Jaffnid. The tribe is around here. Arab Christian Empire allied to the Byzantine Empire, Roman Empire. And then so you see the alliance was the Roman was a big superpower, had and they controlled mostly this area. From 100 AD was ruling, dismantled Nabatean, which were Arab-speaking empire and ruled directly. So Petra was a part of Nabatea, and then this Ghassanid were here. And then Egypt was controlled by the Roman Empire, was Christian. And then this Ethiopia was independent and then becomes Christian. We will see that. As we know, Najashi, which is again the name of the title of the kings. Najashi or Negus is not a specific name, it's like Shah or King or Malik. So in the Ethiopic language, Giez is called Najashi. Negus, Arabic of Negus is Najashi. So it is, we will discuss a little bit. It was initially not Christian, but soon become Christian. So you see the connections are here, the loose connections, alliances, associatedness, being closer to each other. And this is the alliance, and even Medinan people somehow feel an affiliation with the people, like Ghassanids, the Yemeni tribes here. There also were Yemeni tribes, so they're relatives with the Aus al-Khazraj here, and some of them go over there, like Lebanese coming from Lebanon to US. So this is the one X group, and then we have another important kingdom, Lakhmids here, or Nazrid tribe, and they Hera is near Kufa, is a Christian city. Both are Christian, so that's Arab Christians at most of the time we discuss. And they have a very strong rivalry, the same name, but there are a little bit different branches of Christianity. I may discuss that. So you have Sassanids here. These Lakhmids are vassal or loyal or in their alliance with Persians. And then Yemeni tribes more or less sided to the Persians. And one reason they want to keep their identity separate. At around late 2nd century AD or early 3rd century, when both sides of this Ethiopia and Yemen were polytheists, there was an attempt by Aksum Empire to capture and control the Yemen. They couldn't do it, and they couldn't keep their presence here. But that was their dream, to always get here. Okay. And the Yemenis, exactly this is what they don't want. And they want to keep their identity separate, different. And we see, for example, in Pakistan, Afghanistan, we have the Pashtuns area, they overlap together, or the relationship, or many other relationships like that. We have the Christians here even. Okay, maybe it's good also to mention so the alliance you can see is between Himyar, Lakhmids, Persian Empire, and it's some of the Arab tribes here. And then how much they're independent, how much they're influenced by under control of Himyar or Lakhmids is a little story which we cannot open it much. And then why also Persians are empire related, interested, besides the rivalry with the Byzantine Empire, which is the Persian capital was here, many of the wars were happening here. The trade routes from India was important because trade routes many of them were sea routes from the Indian Ocean coming to this Arab Sea, and then to Bab al-Mandab here, and then the Red Sea, and going here to Byzantine Empire. And also Yemen itself has a lucrative trade too. Uh, this part of Yemen, we'll go to a little geography too. It was prosperous. Greeks, Roman called them Arabia Felix, Arabia Prosperous, uh, because they produced two of the uh, like two of the plants which smell good and was burned in the temples and houses to remove bad smell and humidity, frankincense and myrrh. And like the other one we know, family oud, which Indians usually burn. So, and then because of monsoons, and many other feature when we go to the trade, the Meccan trade and the Surat al-Quraysh, maybe we discuss that, that the trade routes also somewhere on land, which we discuss it later on, but mostly in sea. And Sassanids very, very strongly control it, and they're sensitive. And they were sensitive. Byzantines get a foothold. Each side was sensitive to get the other side get a foothold. And Hejaz was maybe the most lawlessness without any central government of all these, because we see have kingdoms here, we have kingdoms here, and some semi-kingdom was established here. So this is the case. Now regarding the the weather, so Ethiopia is high plateau. You can see mountainous and green, and the possibility pasture and agriculture is there. And now even you look, there's rocky, is beautiful. It's actually good site, is stable to go some visit in it. So this agriculture and pasture, I mean, stocks, breeding stocks was easy done. But Yemen also, especially in these northern parts, uh, the weather was okay, the rain was there. You could do agriculture. They have dam, they have rain. So it wasn't as arid here, but over here even there are some regions with oasis and different situation, but these parts of which are all desert or so on is different than Yemen. So you have to have these all kind of in mind. So we have the other alliance, which I said, and then if you go look to the tribes, I'm not going to discuss all of them, but Hamdan is a big tribe, which mostly the backbone of the Imam Ali's army in Safain and in Kufa, and then Husis are from Hamdan. This Banu Yaqzan, we have in mind, or Hadramawt, the different tribe. Maybe today we have something about them. And then Kenda, which there is a kingdom here. Look, if matching it is the kingdom around Qariyat al-Faf, or which is again Yemeni, Mazhaj. These are big tribes, and then Nizari. These are Ma'ad, and here Ma'ad you see is here. Some maps are a little Yamama. Yeah, Najd. Najd is around here, the new capital of Riyadh, Saudi. So I don't go. You see, Ghassan here is shown. Ghassan is shown as a little bit lower, which Tabuk will be close to them, and you have Tamim and Banu. Okay, these are Banu Nazrid. If I maybe I said reverse, I don't know. These are Nazrid and these are Japanese. And then okay, every map has have its showing a little bit up and down, but uh, what I wanted to know, so you see the Himyar, the Kenda, and that I think is okay. Yeah, this is Aksum, then the Port Adel is shown here. So I think it's enough what we want to know. And maybe this is again, uh, yeah, I want to show it. Uh, what here, I don't know what special was the, but we are not discussing this part for now. I don't think we discuss it today. But again, you see Zafar Marib. Okay, yeah, this shows Marib. The other ones didn't show. This is Marib and Sana'a. You can see Marib, the capital of Saba government. And Uchi Marib. Yeah, Marib is also here. Okay, so this is for that. And this is the modern map. Again, you can see Aden and Eden, or this port is Ghani is still important too, is the one has Hadramawts, which are more there. But there are two other ports here, Bab al Mandab, which maybe we need a little bit know. And yeah, there are two. Their names were different at that time. Madaban, this is Bab al Mandab, Mahawan, which maybe we hear a little bit the story of that around these two, which are very closest to Ethiopia and very strategic. So I think, yeah, this is the okay. I think we are enough. Okay, I will go a very, very general brief history here, and then we feel some details, and even maybe we have to come back to a little bit more detail in the centuries before us. So this is the called late Sabaean period, Sabaean period. This is essentially the end of the Saba period and the dominance of Himyar. Remember the three kingdoms, Himyar, Saba, and Hadramawt. That's the beginning. Around 280, some guy, Shammar, maybe the name Shemr is derived from this. I'm not sure. Maybe Shem was Shammar or Shammar. Yoharish residing and his capital Zafar unites Yemen under his rule. So this Himyar dominant. And then Himyar become dominant. This is the one of the, because we will see how we have the reports, how we have the knowledge, information. One of the Byzantine emperors noticed this. Something happened in Yemen. The tribes are now unified in one kingdom, for example, Himyar. So send a kind of ambassador, but also missionary. And this is called Teophilus the Indian to the Himyarite court. This Indian, you should be careful. Because why an Indian from India? A Byzantine Empire sent to Yemen. Uh, it's possible because maybe he's become Christian and maybe he's on the way to India, coming back to Byzantine, sent over there. But other thing you have to see is that the mistake that later on Columbus did and called the natives of America Indians, and we still call them Indians, happened again. And they used to call these Romans and Byzantines call the people of Ethiopia. Yeah, this is the modern map. This Eritrea has separated the whole sea axis. So we go to older map. They called these people of here Indian. And I don't know, maybe because they see darker skin and is on the way to India or of Indian, uh, trader or merchant they saw all usually come from Indian Ocean coming through here. I mean, they call them Indians, so you have to be careful. This sometimes happens today. Anyway, so sends to this court to convert them, to talk with them, didn't go through. But what is more important is Ethiopia. So you have to see this mixing the history of the two parts. South Yemen, which is Himyarite kingdom, now unified it. So now is Himyar. Now is Himyar, or this other map was showing it more simply, Himyar, and Ethiopia. So now what happens? An Ethiopian king converts to Christianity. They were polytheists. We have inscriptions of polytheists. This Izana, we have inscription from him, uh, which is really polytheistic views, and then he changed to Christianity. The Ethiopians have become Hellenized, so more to the Hellenized culture. Actually, everywhere was Hellenized after Alexander. Even Ashkanids or Arsacids kingdom in Iran was Hellenized, and Sassanids were a rebellion against that Hellenization, but also sided more to the Byzantine, which was not natural. They're close to Egypt. They have connection to Egypt. Egypt was, if you look at the map, was connected to Byzantine. So it was a natural, like European countries. Spain maybe is not exactly Anglo-Saxon, but it's naturally closer to that European England or those kind of countries. So this become Christian, and this is important. And his Christianity is serious, but they have this is important later on. We'll see because there is some puzzles about the inscriptions and the degree of polytheism in Arabia based on inscription before the appearance of Prophet Muhammad. But I'm not going to go that because that's a whole another story. Maybe we get to it. But the point is that uh, we have the royal inscriptions. These guys used to write. They have issued coins. On the coins, they use write Greek. So this Hellenized culture, they put a cross on it. On the inscriptions, formal inscriptions, the monumental inscriptions, the one they put on the new buildings, new places, uh, sometimes they're more vague. You're talking about general monotheism, but I think the Ethiopian ones betray most of a tendency towards Christianity, and we can now certainly say they were Christian, and we know started from that 345. Uh, but why we said that? Because you see very close, the Himyar kingdom did the same era change too. So their rivals, their kind of Himyars are worried always about Ethiopians, that they want to invade them again. And as I said, the invasion happened around 180, 200 something before this 280, before that the Yemen be unified under Himyar kingdom, which could be as a result of that intrusion by Ethiopian, that this kingdoms, the Saba kingdom become weakened, and they notice they have to be unified if they don't want to be ruled by Ethiopians. And then they want to have the different identity. And and then it seems they notice, or at least the kings notice, the polytheism is not prestigious. Because you need to know, be aware of the change in Roman Empire simultaneously too. Actually, exactly around the same time, a little bit earlier, 312-13, Constantine, the emperor of Rome, accepted Christianity. So, and then he put all his might behind Christianity. Still didn't declare Christianity the official religion of the empire, but soon will be done. First, the king become Christian. Persecution of Christians stops. First, the king become Christian, and then Christian get a lot of support, and then Christianity become the only accepted religion in the empire. Exactly in that period of 300, 345, you see, and the empire. An empire is big, influencing all around the whole Mediterranean basin. The maps doesn't go that far, but look, you can see all around here. These things are happening. So and I think affected Aksum and affected Himyar. So at least in the official, in this on the appearance, all the you don't see anymore a sign of polytheism, even in Himyar. Ethiopian become Christian. Himyarite adopt, the kings of Himyar adopt the monotheism. Polytheism wasn't chic. This is a different one. Polytheism wasn't very good. You don't get any inscriptions of polytheistic anymore. North Arabia, you have, that Safavitic or writing, so on. But even there stops. I think overall, somewhere around this time, the whole Arabia, you don't see many more people graffiti inscriptions praying to the polytheistic god. It is monotheistic. But if you look to but still some people say, okay, this may be the elite official religion, but what is the street going on is different. Officially, maybe the alcohol is banned in a country but maybe people consuming is still, and so on. But in Himyarite kingdom, a little bit things were more ambiguous. They they keep it generally monotheistic expressions, which maybe uh, I will discuss it next lecture. What examples we have, what kind of terms they use, but if you go deeper, and some consensus is Jewish. So you see, Ethiopians become monotheistic, but more overtly and more clearly toward Christianity, and then the Himyarite kingdom become monotheistic. And then, even Iran, Zoroastrians become more monotheistic, I mean, kind of more advanced, less, it seems. I mean, Zoroastrian heritage is a dualism, but, I think they must be have to go some kind of reform too. And then Yemenis become monotheistic, but a little bit vague, which is Christian Judaism. But, there are times when they go to other forms of uh, expressions and details and some uh, commands they give, you see they're Judaic, more inclined to Judaism. Uh, Now, there is one even. So we have this is long period, which is 100 years. And then, unfortunately, we don't have much information from this period because you have some ambassadors, some people visit, but then we don't have much till from 300, for example, 80 to 500. But the one event which we will see is this. During this period, they sent a Christian missionary, a bishop, to Najran. So we know that Najran, despite the whole kingdom of Yemen is mostly Jewish or still some polytheistic, we have to say some polytheism are there. For example, in Turkey, you have all Kurds are not recognized or Alawites are not much recognized. The Kurds are called the mountainous Turks, but they are there. So what is the official policy is something, what is the actuality is different. So still we have polytheistic people in Iran even too, but according to Ethiopic traditions, which are a little bit against Himyarites and bias positively toward Christians, there is a bishop called Asghir suffers martyrdom in time of Najran during the reign of a king Shurahbil Yakaf, which, as I said, this name Shurahbil is the name of some people in the time of Islam, one of the commanders of Muawiyah army. His name was Shurahbil, that like El, Allah, Israel, Jabrail, Mikhail is something like that. So if we want to see uh, examples of persecutions in the pre-Islamic or pre-natural event, this is an example, but this is a somehow isolated event. And then things start to change a little bit. Look, our historical documentation is vague. I mean, Muslim historians have written something. They have sometimes confused some stuff. Some of correct, some of not. They remember some stuff. Those are details if you have to go through what happened. There are lists. I mean, the good thing about Yemen is, and this era is we have inscriptions, and some of them very historical. And we have some periods we have people have written uh, books or narrations or very close to the events. Some here, and especially the period which we are interested. The period which we are interested is this 519 onwards. You know, then we'll see the Abraha, so on. And we have documentation. I mean, besides inscription, we have narrations. Uh, Somehow, besides that, this early intrusion of Ethiopians in Yemen, again, around this time, Ethiopians start to intervene in Yemen more. They find the opportunity. Some of it is vague, and some of it I don't discuss today. But then people, much of the I put over that they call it first and second intervention of Ethiopian. But when we call first and second, we are talking about this era. We're not talking this first because this is so ancient, so before. Uh, so there is really a first intervention of Ethiopians, intrusion of Ethiopians to the Yemen in before 200, which have its effect on the psyche of these people, which they always want to keep a different identity from Ethiopians, and it must be one reason they adopted Judaism uh, as a religion in contrast to Christianity. But from now on we're talking first and second is uh, around this 519. The Prophet Muhammad was born around 570, so we are close to the time of Quraysh. The ancestor of Prophet are here. Abdul Muttalib uh, maybe was born around this time, so this is very close. So we have first the intervention of Ethiopia in Saudi Arabia, and then we have a merchant called Cosmos, and he wrote his trip, his events of his journey, and then so he's this is interesting. Then we have a king, which we see Madikarib of Ya'fur, which it does something strange. Okay, technically these Himyar kings are allies of Persian, allies of Lakhmids, and somewhat these kingdoms in the middle, which you have to see uh, how independent or how the kingdom are also allies. So the alliance between Himyar, these Mad and Lakhmid and Persians were there. But this guy, it seems, start to switch side. Madi Karib Ya'fur campaigns against Arab auxiliaries of the Persians in Central Arabia. So he start to fight the allies of Persian Empire. So it seems switching side. That means if you do that, for example, suddenly, for example, Syria from one side switching the other side, instead of, for example, supporting Muhammad, Lebanon now fighting it. So you see, it's a switch. Something has happened, and these guys are gradually, instead of being allied to here to be independent, now getting allied to the other alliance, and and then we see that a rebellion, and I have to go to detail, but I give you the outline and then we'll repeat it. Although I have gone slowly, so somehow I have to see how much. If you have the skeleton, maybe I can go with some of the details the rest of the time. Uh, because of this policy of this king of Himyar, which is switching side from Persian Sassanid to Byzantine and become close to Ethiopian or Habesha or Aksum Empire. There were some dissatisfaction, some rebellion, and that some of the tribes, which actually more Hazaramoti tribes, became successful to toppling him. And the guy who does that, his name is Yusuf, As'ar Yas'ar. And Yusuf is name, and As'ar Yas'ar is our two titles. We'll see that. And then in Arabic references, usually it's called Zunovas. So like again, like Zulqarnain, these are epithets, they're kunyas, not actual name, but his name is Yusuf, acts against the Christians and Ethiopian allies in Zafar. So so you remember Hazaramot itself was built out of three kingdoms, Saba and I'm sorry, Himyar was built of three kingdoms, Himyar, Saba, Hazaramot. Uh, and then it seems the kingdom was weakening, becoming under influence of Ethiopians. Uh, so a rebellion from Hazaramoti tribes, that Yazan tribe, which I showed to you earlier, was the core of it. Banu Yazan here happens and toppling the government in Zafar here. And then by toppling the government, which we'll see the story because that's the whole story of Najran, he conducts a campaign in Tahama and blocks the harbor of Madaban on the west of coast by means of chain. So this guy is really fast. I mean, he comes here. Look, Madaban is here. So this port was important. Block the port. The same techniques maybe Constantinople used to protect himself using a chain, protecting any ships from Ethiopia coming here, uh, and then start to do some actions here against the alliances of previous government or Ethiopians. It seems Ethiopians have landed here and have got some base. Some part of the story is not very clear, and I think we guess it seems some in Najran or area there are some Ethiopic tribes too. So the issue has become complicated. Like Arab tribes come to Iran, and some of them settle in Khorasan, and then during Abbasid revolutions they become important. Or we have this migration happens. So this is the other story we have to have in mind. Uh, uh, and then he does siege and surrender of Najram and martyrdom of the bishop or the leader of Christian over there, Arithas. This is Greek name. And okay, our story today will be this. Beyond this, we'll go to the Abraham Field story. So we stop here to this main story. I give you the outline. So I want you to remember the alliances: Byzantine Empire, Ghassanid, or maybe see I'm not mistaken. It's here. Sorry. Uh, I think it's correct, but if later on, if I mix these two, I would check it because I wrote it in my memory. But Ghassanid, I use the old name. This new name is not established. Ghassanid, Aksum Christian of Yemen, uh, and then Sassanid Empire, Lakhmid, Himyar Kingdom, which was mostly Jewish. The Kingdom, which is the Arabic Ma'ad Kingdom, the Arabic kingdoms inside Central Arabia, closer to Hijaz, mostly Najj, which aligns with the Persians. And regarding the sources, which are mostly discussion from this Norbert names, I, uh, I mean, one thing which is the period we are looking is about 518, 519 to 525 AD. And then he adds, for no other period of the pre-Islamic history of the Arabian Peninsula do we have so extensive and diverse a range of literary epigraphic source texts composed so soon after the events as we do for 520s. So you see this the issue they raised regarding the Islamic or life of Prophet Muhammad, that the sources were written, the story was written much longer. We don't have much inscriptions and so on. Uh, is not much here. We have very detailed inscriptions. We have some writings, but we have to be careful. The writings are not always historical. Like any events can be changed. Like something like Karbala, which was very historical in Abi Makhnaf story, but then later on, a few centuries later, you see layers that are added to it. To when we shows that the Shahada is a mixture of history and some other elements in it. Uh, and then we have a famous Byzantine historian Procopius, which write about the wars or activities of Byzantine empires, the wars with the Persians, and then and their actions. He wrote a lot. The Procopius is famous. You can find it on the internet or get it. This merchant trader Cosmos Indicopolitusus, which is interesting. He has some skills to in carving inscriptions and writing. So this guy is has a writing. We know about him. But there are books written Syrian, Sabaean, the ancient language of Yemen, ancient Ethiopic. And then one interesting thing happened is this. Till maybe a few decades ago, the story of martyrs of Najran was known through Islamic sources, Arabic Islamic sources, and those inscriptions. And then those inscriptions are written usually from the side of people who committed atrocities. So you see the Ashab al-Ukhdud guys, if we are correct, wrote it, or people of Ditch write descriptions, the bad guys, Zonovas and his generals wrote. But Islamic, okay, Quran we have, Islamic sources we have, and the Christians. But the text of the Christians sources were not known. Now, in the recent decades or recent century, maybe, these sources are found, and that's at another dimension, and that's what is also the puzzle why the Western commentators try to interpret the Buruj like that. So the books that I think we have to name is one is called there are three. There are three different Syriac versions. Two of them are letters associated with the Simeon of Bet Arsham, which is, I think, a bishop of Era, which wrote the events, communicate, and telling the Byzantine or other people what happened, and he heard it out. People come and tell him, like a massacre happens, like now in Palestine or other places, and people hear about it. And there is also a book of Himyarites. And then another source is that the first letter, which this Simeon of Bet Arsham wrote it, has become a basis of a Greek, but very hagiographic text. A text which is an expanded, many miracles happen, uh, which is about martyrs of Najran. Or martyr are they don't call it martyr Najran, martyr of Aritha, that bishop of Najran. So we have two letters, a book of Himyarites, and this one we can call it martyrdom of this Aritha or something like that. Uh, yeah, Martyrdom of the title is exactly Martyrdom of Saint Aretas and his companion city of Najran. Uh, uh, but the good thing is that we have epigraphic evidence besides okay Muslim sources which I didn't discuss much besides the Procopius Piscacosmus, because besides these three four sources, which if we add this Greek one is based on the first one, some additions, we cannot sure how much those additions are correct or not, but okay, still we can consider it four, but we have inscriptions. And then this Saint Aretas, I have to add his name is Al-Haris in Arabic, and he's the central figure in the Martyrdom in Najran. He's the leader, which is killed. Uh, and then the good thing is that because of the inscriptions, the authenticity of hagiographic account is supported. We know the people existed, the outline is correct, details maybe not. As always, even to go military battles, the number of soldiers involved, so the number of people from enemy killed are not accurate. I mean, hagiographic. This is the accused. Sometimes they want to accuse Islamic sources hagiographic. Historical sources are not. The books regarding the history of Ashura Ibn Makhnaf is not hagiographic, but Rosat al-Shahada, you have to assume it satisfied the definition of hagiographic. So some of the discussion I do here also, I want to find another examples related to our discussion about Sira. Just look, they define hagiographic refers to writing, hagiographic, writing about the lives of saints and holy people, typically characterized by idealized reverent portrayal that emphasize their virtues, miracles, and spiritual achievements. Hagiographic works often prioritize religious edification over historical accuracy, presenting their subject as moral exemplars rather than complex human beings, and primarily intended to inspire faith and devotion readers. You see, this is also the difference of the modern secular academic view with the traditional religious view. I mean, the truth is somewhere in the middle. Okay, I will go with the outline, uh, which I try to go a little bit faster. Outline the Christian Robin gave, uh, and then you see it's very historical and fill in some more detail. But although I said some of it in the summary, but leave some more. And then I was going to go with the second paper, some more detail, which and the next lecture, maybe the complete picturing will come with valid solid. Uh, so till 500 for 200 years, Kingdom of Himyar seems very powerful, and not only powerful in Yemen, but start to have the influence in Arabian Peninsula. And I think this is important to investigate. For example, for some of the questions, what happened? Why we don't get polytheistic inscriptions no more inside even Arabia too, inside Hijaz too. This may be effect. And then maybe they get to Medina and start to collect taxes. At first I was hearing them, I didn't believe it, but I think this is now the reverse. That the dynamic of the political rule in Arabia, which they were under influence of Yemen, maybe was more real, but then it collapsed, and then at the time of the Prophet and Muslims wasn't there. And when they wrote the history book, they didn't maybe notice it or didn't emphasize it because maybe it didn't look good for the rulers. That I mean, we have mentions of kings of Yemen in hadiths. There is one funny story that uh, uh, this Ash'as ibn Qais Kandi, which is a very colorful character. His daughter poisoned Imam Hassan, and he was in time of Imam Ali, maybe behind the Ibn Muljam terror, and then his son was involved in Karbala. When want to came get Islam, uh, come visit Prophet, and he called or he greeted Abbas, the uncle of uh, Prophet, with a royal title, and then. And then Prophet kind of asked why you call Abbas a royal title, what's going on? And then Abbas, uncle of Prophet. And then it seems uh, Abbas, when he was doing trade, uncle of Prophet, he go to Yemen to go to Kenda. Ashtasabi said he was Kenda, not Yemen, a little bit north. He used to use a royal title for himself to deal with them because they were king or princess, then he introduced himself, I am a prince from Hejaz too. So Abbasini bluffed. So I'm saying they were aware of some of this stuff, but the fact how much, maybe you don't want maybe emphasize, okay, this country, Saudi never in any official document say we're totally under influence of, for example, US or something like that. Anyway, let's go faster. Uh, but around 500 something changed, and we said in the summary that somehow this Himyar lose in independence and power itself, which was dominating Central Arabia, Hijaz, Yemen, Najd, or those stuff, he itself become under influence of Ethiopian, and they know the name of the kings. They think maybe it happened around the king, which is around this time. We don't know much detail, but definitely we know at the other king here, the successor of him, Maadi Karib Ya'fur, which is the one before our villain, Joseph Abu Zonophas. So that Yusuf Abu Zonophas was the king after Maadi Karib Ya'fur, rebel against him, uh, and I don't remember if he killed him or what happened exactly. Well, we know he rebelled. Uh, it seems the influence of Aksumite become too much. They were able to put their man on the throne. Whether it was a military invasion is not very clear at that stage. But now on the throne of Himyar is a Christian, contrary to being Jewish and very loyal to Aksum. And then this guy, as we said, is kind of reverse side, now attacking some Arab allies of Persians in going up even toward Iraq to Lakhmids, and get support with other Arabs by Byzantium. So this change is like a coup, completely switching this government in this country from Sassanid Persian alliance to the Byzantine Christian. Uh, Yeah, and then you see this not only happened in Hemyer, the king that the Hemyers have placed in Ma'ad, which I showed you the place over there, which is Kendi, which is, I mean, Ashas ibn Qais Kendi was from there. Remember, Ashas ibn Qais Kendi always claimed royal lineage, and he has some ambitions to become caliph too. Besides Muawiyah and time of Imam Ali, he was thinking with the support of Yemeni tribe, he can revive the kingdom because he was the lineage of the royal ancient of kings of Yemen, and the Yemeni tribes were in Kufa. And then he thought if maybe somewhere in the actually Muawiyah, I think maybe he died very early, just after the death of Martyr Imam Ali. It's possible Muawiyah get rid of him too. If it is true he's involved in the Muljam assassination, that plot. I'm a little digressing, but it's important. Look, the Ibn Muljam assassination plot with the Khawarij had two other ones intended to kill too, Amr As and Muawiyah, which they were not successful. Muawiyah, I don't know, one of them they hurt a little bit, the other one didn't attend it. If this is true, and if they were successful in all their three assassinations, the one who would benefit would Ashas ibn Qais, because then he could get Kufa for himself, and possibly with the alliance of Yemeni tribes, which are powerful, claim something by himself. But although he wasn't very anything, he was even not only an early Muslim, he was in Red Wars among those who were become apostate. And then even he saved his life by some tricks, and Abu Bakr forgave him. So, I mean, that says he didn't have credentials, but you can see that he has some ambitions. But putting aside, this Kenda also switched side. So going back to our own story, all both Kenda and Himyar kings suddenly switched side to Byzantine. Which, if Himyar is controlling Kenda, if Himyar switch side, is natural Kenda switch side too. So we can see the events today. Now it seems okay. Maybe I wasn't careful. Maybe Maadi Karib Ya'fur died for some reason, which we are not sure exactly when, summer, June 521, 522, and then open a vacuum, and then this produced a rebellion by the tribe. Yeah, maybe that's more accurate. And then, as I said, that Yusuf Asar, Yasar get the position. Uh, and um and and as I said, his names are, yeah, one thing I said, his names are different. Beside Yusuf, he has Masruq in Syriac name, maybe his actual name, maybe. And Yusuf, the name adopted when becoming king, a Jewish name. And these are his titles. And then in Greek, they come to Onas, which is Zonovas. In Arabic, Zora Azonovas. So, I mean, he has different names, and sometimes it's confusing. Yusuf As'ari, As'ari Zonovas, or Masruq. But he's the villain of our story. If it He's the chief of Ashab al-Ukhdud, if our interpretation is correct. He's the leader. And with definitely Jewish inclination, political ambitions, and then when that king, which is switched side to Byzantium, died for whatever reason or murdered, because that's possibly murdered, because Persians were not happy, old alliance tribes were not happy. Nowadays, even Saudi kingdom, for example, maybe many may not happy for this too much westernization. Ben Salman is going, but this is another thing. That's switching alliances. But if Ben Salman suddenly switched to China, become a Chinaman, then definitely there will be tensions in the kingdom. So uh, then what happens is that this rebellion with this Yusuf or Joseph happens. He start to attack. He killed. So this is a very historical narration. I have to see how it's related to exact verses of Quran. And then this, you see, this early summary is not illegitimate. Joseph succeeded in killing 300 Aksumites. So Ethiopians maybe have soldiers or landed in Yemen. So there must be something like that. We don't have the detailed history. And that they were able to switch, persuade Himyars to switch. So killed three Aksumites, which would in Zafar, the capital. So, for example, uh, the military attaché, military advisors of Aksumites were helping the Himyards, and they were killed. For example, in Ukraine, many Europeans are helping Ukrainian army. The Russians killed them. Himyarite capital set fire to the church. Here is not very explicit whether just the church is destroyed or people died in it. I mean, it's possible. It's possible the events happened more, but most people associate it to events in Najran, not necessarily other cities. Zafar was the capital. Then he moved because he moved to the coastal region of Red Sea that I showed to you, that faced Abyssinia, and then attacked them and then captured the city. He maybe doubted the loyalty of those cities. Maybe there were many Abyssinian tribes over there, like Ukraine and Russia. We have Russian, uh, 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 the provinces in Ukraine, which Obelisk, which is our Russian, and then how loyal to the Ukraine or vice versa. Uh, Another church. So one in Zafar, one in the other port I show you, Makhavan, which is now Al-Khad Mocha. And he destroyed, and at least the reports say he arson a church in that one. So again, maybe there are more Christians over there. So maybe in the regions of Yemen, closer to Ethiopia, we have more presence of Christians. Look, if you look at the map, maybe here's are more Christianized. And then the inside parts, the coastal area, maybe because of trade, commerce, settlement, they come like we have in different parts of Iran. For example, immigrants from neighboring countries are there. We don't find any immigrants from eastern countries in, for example, Azerbaijan area in Iran, or in southern states of United States. We used to have more migrants from south of United States, but now we see it everywhere. Anyway, and then it is claimed the toll of the campaign reached somewhere they killed about 12,000, 14,000, which is a big number. 11,000 prisoners and 290,000 animals seized, which is big if this is the case. Uh, and then this Zonovas, Joseph, put camp in that one of the ports because they worried Axumites will counterattack, which they did later on. And then so they blocked the port. But what he did, this is the story starts. Our story starts. And Uh, while he's worried about Aksumites, and mostly is in the coast of Red Sea, the western coast of Red Sea, like Hodeidah now, it's in Yemen, or other Bab al-Mandeb, or other port cities. Um, he sent one of his commander, which is, it's mentioned he's Jewish prince, explicitly Robin call him Jewish prince, called Sharahil Yaqubul Zu Yazan. So again, you see from Yazan tribe against the Osis of Najran, which Najran, which was a little bit up north, has not accepted the kingship of the Zonowas. The new people getting power in Zafar, which is exactly the same. Yemen nowadays, they move the former government, which is supported by Saudi, moved the capital to Aden, but the Sana'a was with the Houthis, or vice versa. All this stuff. Now, we know that the population of the Najran uh, still included some Jews and pagans, but it was mostly Christians. So that's the whole question: is it fully Christian? No, this state wasn't. The whole Yemen wasn't Christian, and then the Christians were belong to two different uh, antagonistic Christological denominations. We discussed, and I forgot to put the slide, but I will explain it briefly. We had it in the previous sets of lectures that at the time of appearance of Islam, the Christianity in Near East, Middle East, it divided three groups, three branches. And one is called Melekite or Chalcedonian Khalqidunian in Arabic church, which was imperially supported, Byzantine supported, which become dominant and essentially is the church. Later on, we know the Catholics mostly, or other church we know, and the disputes were the nature of Jesus, and these are the guys which get the middle ground, but is one of the most confusing. Jesus is both fully human, fully divine, which is hard to understand, and culturally are the Hellenite Greeks. And then there was a church which is called Monophysites, which believe Jesus have one nature, only divine. There's no human thing in it. I'm a little simplifying it, but you have it in slides too. And Monophysites, or sometimes called Jacobites, were dominant in Syria, in Egypt. Coptics were like that, uh, and in Ethiopia, actually. Mostly Eastern Church, Greek Orthodox. The Orthodox ones are more closer to that, Syriac ones. And then there was a church we called Eastern Church, Nestorian. And then this Monophysite ones, or they call them anti-Chalcedonian ones. There was a schism between Arius and Arianism. This is a big story. Their language was mostly Semitic, the Syriac or Aramaic. They were not Greek. The liturgy wasn't Greek. The text wasn't Greek. And then we have a third church, which in theology was closer to the Chalcedonian, but culturally, liturgy-wise, was Syriac. But it was under control of Persians, Sassanids, so called Eastern Church or Nestorians. So that church, Sassanids, because couldn't let the church be under control and influence of uh, the rival Byzantine Empire, they established a church in Hera and other places, and that church has spread a lot in Ahwaz and other places. We have them in to the Shapur, stuff like that. Uh, and that church was the third one. Now it seems uh, Hera was that Nestorian one, and then Ethiopian one was the anti-Chalcedonian Monophysite or Jacobite one. And then in the city of Najran, you have both. So let's see what we have. One group, which there are two of those three groups are mostly represented. One group had been converted as a result of the contacts with Christian of the Persian Empire, especially those of Hera, which Lakhmids, near Kufa, who insisted on the complete humanity of Christ, introducing clear distinction between the Son of Mary and Son of God. This is a little simplification, but many of these later convert to Islam. They belong to a dissident church, often called Nestorian, even though the members of the church did not claim heritage patriarch of Nestorius. This the Christian Roban write this. I'm saying a little bit maybe more nuance needed, but for now it's okay. The Nestorian community of Najran was founded in the first half of the 5th century, so they were there about 100 years. During the reign of Sassanid king Yezdegerd, probably Yezdegerd II. This works well with the chronology of introduction and growth of Christianity in the Persian Gulf, where the mention of the first bishopric goes back to 410. So we see it. We have the Christian community in the southern coast of the Persian Gulf in Arab states, like now there's the one in Dubai or Qatar or Bahrain. Hassa area. They started 410. They must have sent missionary to the Yemen and Oman area and get some Christianity established in Najran, which is good to know because Najran, we know, is the delegate go-to prophet for Mabahala too. The other Christians of Najran were converted during an important missionary effort initiated by Byzantine territory. So Byzantine get worried that this Christian, no, these guys are getting Christian. For example, Iran sends the missionary and make people Muslim, but make them Shia Muslim in Africa. Then Saudi, when we get worried, send their own missionaries. Like we have in Nigeria, what's happening. Byzantine territory, more precisely in northern Syria, in anti-Chalcedonian circles rejected the Christological definition of the Council of Chalcedon, asserting these guys, as I said, they're called Monophysites, so they say they're missionary. They were Christians of Byzantine. Okay, this is a little bit complex. These guys become Monophysites because the other rival group from Syria sent a missionary, make the people natural Monophysites. Empire for a while was supporting Monophysites, but something happened in 518. And again, these timings all could be related. In 518, Empire switched side and become Chalcedonian. So in one sense, Byzantine Empire is not supporting neither Monophysites nor Nestorian, which are Najran. And I'm thinking, as somehow we see, this issue of Najran is not too much Byzantine Empire, it's more local, is Ethiopic thing. Although the large alliance is between Byzantine and Ethiopia, but it's loose. And the same way, for example, the alliance maybe alliances with the resistant movement between Iran and Lebanon and Iraq are much more solid than Iran and they are more independent. I think this whole issue of bringing Byzantine, which even I myself did it because the sources, is confusing. I really think is mostly the whole issue of Najran is more local. And the reason of mixture is that because some of those hagiographic books bring in Byzantine in, but the other documents contradict it. This is more local even. It is in the sense Ethiopia get the power, Ethiopia get the control, and Ethiopia, which is Monophysites, expanded their religion inside the Najran. So we have two Christian communities over there. Because it seems some of the sources that said martyrs, Christian martyrs, are mostly from one of the branches. So, if this guy, for example, Salafis get the power, they will kill Christians, but they also kill Shias, mostly among the Muslims. So, or kill Alawites, maybe not other people. So, like the one in Syria, so on. So, something like that. It was elective selectiveness. Uh, uh, yeah, so we said the first conversion in Najran for this group did not happen earlier than the middle of 5th century, so this group established relatively later on. We had an example of repression as we saw that Bishop Asghir was martyred in Najran, but it wasn't as systematic, although the Himyar was Jewish, but it's not too apparently Jewish. It was the elite of Himyar, and the lists of Christians in Najran grow. But Najran had the two Christian community out of the famous three. It has Monophysites or Nestorians, and has some Greeks and polytheists. But the Syriac sources underlie the wealth and financial power of Monophysites of Najran. And these Monophysites are mostly among the martyrs. At least one of the sources say these are the main martyrs. Okay, we're getting short in time. maybe I finish this line and then maybe add a few minutes just by word the other details missing. And then in June, and okay, going back to the story, that commander which Zonovas sent Sharahil in June and July 523. Sharahil, who was in command of army King Joseph, began the blockade of Najran. They surrendered in Najran, but they couldn't invade it. They blocked all the caravans, everything going in. But there he made strong resistance. Then he couldn't do much, but actually he is the guy who wrote many inscriptions and explaining what happened. And we know much of the information because Sharahil wrote it. And maybe it's during the time he's surrendering over there and doesn't have much to do explaining stuff. He was then joined by King Joseph, who promised to respect the lives of the dissidents and offered him their submission. So then Yusuf, no, Zonavas get from the frontier, from the coastal cities, move to the inside, go to the Najran because that wasn't resolved. And he promised them, and if you go to the detail, it's interesting. There, because this Christian Roman right historical, he saw on the Torah or so you see the whole Jewishness coming out. He promised them, and so oath on Torah, other stuff. Torah that I will give you, if you surrender, I will give you safe, and I will show you some detail. The promise was not kept. A great number of Christians, and here said all Byzantine allegiance, means monophysites, it seems were executed. And then here says executed. It's not burning. Okay, so the Christian Rabban really doesn't do the story very well. But at least one thing he showed is this is the inscription. Look, that inscription of Sharahil Yaqbul Yazan commemorating the siege of Najran. So this is a real historical thing. We have an inscription. This is a photograph, and which explain the siege of Najran. And then the script is Sabaic, and then the script of Sabaic is more closer to you feel Greek. You some of the it's not Greek, is really different. Phoenician, Sabaic, but the symbols are more European type. I know they're different. You see sigma, somehow like in gamma type symbol in it. Now, who they executed? They executed especially the leader called Al-Haris, son of Kab, the Greek Aretas. And Haris and companions were immediately, okay, they execute him, they killed them, but this event make a lot of noise in the whole ancient world. That the killing few thousand Christians, we haven't seen any detail now, spread out, and the churches reacted. They make them martyrs. Beatified is an very process, elaborate process. Catholic Church make them saints. This guy is saint already in the churches, and then both Monophysites and Chalcedonians. So you see now an alliance happens between, for example, between Zaydis and Imamis, So the branches of Shia or Islam, they're not exactly the same, but usually this Monophysite and Chalcedonians are against each other. But Monophysites in a politically, Ethiopia is now alliance with Byzance. They all used to have the rivalries, but the martyrdom is from them, and this counteract by Joseph. Essentially, Iranians of Sassanid must be behind this rebellion of these tribes against the expansion of dominance and influence Ethiopian and Byzantine in Saudi. So this Yusuf Novas and its tribes, all the alliance of tribe he lead must be connected with the Iranian Sassanid Empire. They were closely observe what's going on and so on. And then it seems the massacre happened November 523. That's the most time, and all the accounts of Syriac Greek said that. Uh, Now, okay, uh, the let's see the story. At least finish one story. Uh, the hagiographic story says, as I said, this was spread all in Christendom. First people in Hera held it, and then maybe Ethiopia heard it. They wrote to the Byzantine king. Byzantine king heard it. We got very upset. He wrote a strong letter to the Ethiopian guy. Go punish this Zonovas guy. And then they collected many ships and go. And then the king of Ethiopia, which will be important for the next part when we go to Abraha, his name is Caleb Ella Asbaha. It's like Abraha is close. Caleb, this is a biblical name, Ella Asbaha. Take an army and then invaded now the Ethiopia, invaded South Yemen for a second time. Not the ancient one. One is around 518, 519. They landed some soldiers and they changed the government. Uh, and the king which they installed was a pro-Ethiopic. Then Zonovos rebelled. Uh, and this Joseph Zonovos rebelled. Now killed the Christian in Najran. These upset people. They sent a new army, and then this time they invaded fully. But if you go to the story, really, this is again local because if you go to the details, uh, and then we have a report by an ambassador which was sent a little bit later, 531. His name is Lulianus, and he called those Ethiopians Indians. But it shows the relationship was very weak. Actually, the ruler of Ethiopia, Aksum, was getting happy that now they have the ambassador of Byzantine. And I think because of their success in Yemen and Ethiopia and defeating the Persian alliance and changing Himyar to Byzantine alliance or the Ethiopic alliance, it is the Byzantine Empire sent ambassador. So if we go to the basic story, which seems more uh, reasonable and he has all the intentions the Ethiopian king react. After the massacre in Najran, the Ethiopian king uh, left Aksum. They said it happened in the Pentecost of 525. So it takes a while. If the massacre is 523, the reaction is not immediate. It takes about 2 years. Pentecost usually happens in somewhere around 50 days after Easter, which is around the time we are, kind of maybe a little bit earlier, later. They took 70 ships. They passed from Adolis, passing the Red Sea. It seems they were very easily able to kill King Joseph. It seemed the port, the entrance port, which they were landing in, like Normandy or stuff like that. They landed World War II. This King Joseph was killed when he was trying to oppose the landing of the Ethiopian king. And there are some myth about him, pro-Arab nationalist sentiment which is supporting him, that he rode with his escape. He rode with his horse to the river and drowned, but he still died. And his death precipitated the crushing defeat of the Himyarite army. The date of defeat is still under discussion, whether it's exactly 525, 531. We know the massacre is 523, but the time this Zono is killed and the whole Himyarite kingdom fall down, we don't know. There are some discussions which we don't need to go through that. Joseph's death definitely ended the independence of Kingdom of Himyar, will be important with the story of Abraham, which survived under Aksumite domination for 50 years before it's disappeared. So it seems the invasion of Aksumites or getting influence in the Himyar started earlier. If we accept 50 years, it must be 575, 475, maybe. We started at 500, but for a while it seems the Himyar was getting weakened and Aksum getting influence, and Aksum gets so powerful they changed the king. And then, but a rebellion happened by Joseph Novus, and again Aksum intervened, and Ethiopia intervened and changed the king. Now the Aksumites took position of the capital Zafar, Mareb, the ancient capital of Sabaeans, Jove, Najran, and so on. It was a remarkable success which they commemorated Mareb, the creator of South Arabian civilization, with inscriptions syllabic years. So again, we know about this event because now Ethiopic guys with a language which got syllabic years, which is interesting. They have consonants and they have syllables like Fatha, Kasra, Zemma, but for each consonant, which syllable, they have a different symbol. So the language has 200 symbols. Like, T with Ta with A, T with E with T with O have different symbols. So, you come, okay, I have to go. Unfortunately, we don't have two fragments of these documents survives. Fragments that do not join and do not give the name of its author. The second fragment mentions the conquest of Yemen and the death of the king of Himyar. The fact we know that if Joseph Zonovas is dead historically show certain in this campaign is because of this inscription. Actually, I have his picture. Maybe we go to question and answer, or the few minutes we have, I will show it to you. Okay, maybe I stop here. Look, we saw an event. We saw an event killing Christians. We saw burning churches, but we haven't seen yet burning of the believers. Uh, uh, Actually, because the Christian Roman give very summary of the events. He just said, okay, Zono was killed, few thousand of them. Yeah, the promise was not kept. A great number of Christian, all of Byzantine allegiance, it was executed. I mean, is it the topic many of the scholars don't like about it because this is Jewish people are committing atrocities. I have we can discuss it in the next lecture in more details because this even is good till now in many aspects, but you must have that fire and the ditch and people thrown in it to be closer to the Quranic one. So I will stop here just maybe to show you that. I mean, I wanted to go. I have prepared more, but I think it's a good time to stop because look, I want to show you that the inscriptions. This is the one from Sharah Yaqubul Zuyazan, which is talk about the siege of Najran. This may be by the king of Ethiopia. This is the syllabic G's inscription, probably by Caleb Ella Asbaha, which talks about this campaign because his name is not seen in this part, but the part we can read, you see two sections, and then some part of it missed, clearly says that Zonovas is died. So this is a precious one. And then those details which about the burning and stuff like that, I need to discuss next lecture. I kind of try to join it with the Walid Saleh article and then kind of maybe finishing the story this part. So thank you, for your attention. I stop here, and any question I would be happy to answer.